What is the colors? What is the colors? What about the colors? We need to understand now everything about the colors. I want to explain for you everything about the colors to understand now. Understanding color, knowing how colors are created and how they relate to each other lets you work more effectively in Photoshop instead of achieving an effect by accident, and you will produce constant results thanks to understand of basic color theory. And what about the primary colors? The primary colors, additive primaries, are the three colors of light, red and green and blue, that produce all the colors in the visible spectrum when added together in different combinations, by the way. And adding equal parts of red and blue and green light produces and white, and the complete absence of red and blue and green light results in black. And computer monitors are devices that use the additive primaries to create color, like the screenshot now. We have A and B and C. Additive colors RGB. A is meaning red, and B is meaning green, and C is meaning blue color. Yes. And subtractive primaries are pigments which create a spectrum of color in different combinations. Unlike monitors and printers use subtractive primaries, and cyan and magenta and yellow and black pigments to produce colors through subtractive mixing. The term subtractive is used, by the way, because the primary colors are pure until you begin mixing them together, and resulting in colors that are less pure versions of the primaries. For example, orange is created through the subtractive mixing of magenta and yellow together. And look at the screenshot now. We have A and B and C and D. Subtractive colors CMYK. A is meaning cyan, B is meaning magenta, C is meaning yellow, D is meaning black. So the color wheel, if you are new to adjusting color components, it helps to keep a standard color wheel diagram on the hand when you work on color balance. And you can use the color wheel to predict how a change in one color component affects other colors, and also how changes translate between RGB and CMYK color models, like the screenshot. We have color wheel here. This is the color wheel, by the way. And we have A as meaning red, and B yellow, and C green, and D cyan, and E blue, and F magenta. For example, you can decrease the amount of any color in an image by increasing the amount of its opposite on the color wheel, and vice versa. And colors, by the way, that lie opposite each other on the standard color wheel are known as complementary colors. And similarly, you can increase and decrease a color by adjusting the two adjacent colors on the wheel, or even by adjusting the two colors adjacent to its opposite. And in a CMYK image, you can decrease magenta either by decreasing the amount of magenta or by increasing its complement, and which is green, the color on the opposite side of the color wheel from magenta. In an RGB image, you can decrease magenta by removing red and blue or by adding green. And all of these adjustments result in an overall color balance containing less magenta. So what about color models spaces? Color models spaces. Color models spaces and moods. Color models spaces and moods. By the way, it's meaning a color model describes the colors we see and work actually with in digital image. And each color model, such as RGB or CMYK or HSB, represents a different method, usually numeric, for describing color. And a color space is a variant of a color model and has a specific gamut and range of colors. For example, within the RGB color model are a number of color spaces, and Adobe RGB and sRGB, Pro Photo RGB, and so on. And each device, by the way, like your monitor or printer, has its own color space and can only reproduce colors in GIMP. And when an image moves from one device to another, image colors may change because each device interprets the RGB or CMYK values according to its own color space. And you can use color management when moving images to ensure that most colors are the same or similar enough to they appear consistent. And in Photoshop, in Photoshop, a document's color mode determines which color model is used to display and print the image you are working on. And Photoshop bases its color modes on the color models that are useful for images used in publishing. And you can choose from RGB and red and green and blue and CMYK, like cyan and magenta and yellow and black, and lab color based on CIE and L multiply A multiply B and grayscale. And Photoshop, by the way, also includes modes for specialized color output such as indexed color and duotone. And the color modes determine the number of colors, by the way, and the number of channels and the file size of an image choosing a color mode, and also determines which tools and file formats are available. And when you work with the colors in an image, you are adjusting numerical values in the file, and it's easy to think of a number as a color, but these numerical, by the way, values are not absolute colors in themselves, and they only have a color meaning within the color space of the device that is producing the color. So what about adjust color hue, saturation and brightness? What about adjust color hues, saturation and brightness? Based on the human perception of color, the HSB model describes three fundamental characteristics of color, by the way. Hue is meaning color reflected from transmitted through an object, and is measured as a location on the standard color wheel, expressed as a degree between 0 and 360. And in common use, hue is identified, by the way, by the name of the color, and such as red or orange or green. And what about saturation? Saturation is meaning strength or purity of the color, sometimes called chroma actually, yes. And saturation represents the amount of gray in proportion to the hue, and measured as a percentage from 0% gray to 100% fully stored. And on the standard color wheel, saturation increases from the center to the edge. And what about brightness? Brightness is meaning relative lightness or darkness of the color, usually measured as a percentage from 0% black to 100% white, like this screenshot now. It's meaning we have A and B and C and D. HSP color model. A is meaning hue, and B is meaning saturation, and C is meaning brightness for the colors. Yes. Thank you.